My father put the pen in front of me like it was a weapon and said, "Sign your name before the detective comes back inside." The statement was already printed. 2 pages. My full name at the bottom, and one clean sentence near the top that would have ruined my life. I knowingly kept the pills in my backpack. My backpack sat open on the coffee table between us. My notebooks were stacked beside it. My scholarship letter was half visible under my mother's hand, the blue university logo sticking out like something they had already decided I did not deserve. Mr. Bennett, my father's friend who used to practice law, stood by the window with his arms folded. He had helped them write it. My mother had locked the living room door after Detective Harris stepped onto the porch to take a call. My brother Ethan sat on the couch in his hoodie, staring at the floor like the victim. My mother looked straight at me and said, "If you don't do this, everyone will know you let your own brother go to prison because you were jealous of him." Outside, rain hit the front window. Red and blue police lights moved across the ceiling. Something small inside the side pocket of my backpack blinked once. I looked at the pen. "If Ethan wants a confession," I said, "he can write his own name." For a few seconds, nobody spoke. That was the first time I understood this was not a family meeting. It was a sacrifice. And I was the only person in the room who had not agreed to it. Ethan was 24. He had been pulled over 2 hours earlier with enough pills in his car that the police were not calling it a mistake. They had searched the car, asked questions about the garage, and taken his phone. Detective Harris had been calm, almost polite, but I saw the way he looked at the bags on the kitchen counter. I saw the way my parents kept answering before he finished asking. When he stepped outside, my mother called Mr. Bennett. By the time I came into the living room, the statement was already on the coffee table. My mother said, "You're 18. You have no record. They'll go easier on you." My father said, "You're a good student. People believe girls like you." Mr. Bennett said, "A clean record and cooperation can make a big difference." Ethan said nothing. That silence hurt more than anything. Not because I expected him to protect me. I knew Ethan. I knew he had been protected his entire life. But some childish part of me still thought there was a line even he would not let them cross. There wasn't. I looked at him. "Are the pills yours?" My mother snapped. "Do not interrogate your brother." My father leaned over the table. "This is bigger than your attitude, Claire." "My attitude?" I asked. "You have always acted like you were better than this family," my mother said. Her hand tightened on my scholarship letter. "Now you can finally prove you care about something besides yourself." That was my mother's gift. She could turn any boundary into selfishness. Ethan wrecked my father's truck when he was 19, and my parents called it a rough season. Ethan stole cash from my mother's purse, and she said she must have misplaced it. Ethan dropped out of community college after 3 weeks, and my father said classrooms were not for everyone. I got good grades. I worked weekend shifts at a grocery store. I filled out college applications at the kitchen table while Ethan slept upstairs. Nobody called that discipline. In our house, responsibility was not praised. It was collected like rent. 2 weeks before that night, a state university offered me a partial scholarship. I cried in the bathroom at school because I did not want my mother to see how badly I wanted out. When I showed her the letter, she read the first paragraph and said, "College is far away. Your brother isn't in a stable place right now." That was the closest she ever came to saying what she really meant. Stay, work, help, shrink. But the statement on the coffee table was worse than anything I had imagined. It was not asking me to delay college. It was asking me to put my name on Ethan's crime. My father tapped the paper with 2 fingers. "Sign it." "No." His face changed first. Not anger. Surprise. Like a chair had spoken. My mother laughed once. "You think saying no makes you brave? I think saying yes makes me a criminal." Mr. Bennett finally looked at me. "Claire, this is not as simple as you think." "It says I knowingly kept the pills in my backpack," I said. "That's simple." My father slammed his palm on the table hard enough that the pen rolled off and hit the rug. "Do you understand what happens if you don't help him?" "Yes," I said. "He answers for what he did." Ethan lifted his head then. His eyes were red. his face soft with panic. And for 1 second I thought he might finally tell the truth. Instead, he said, "Just do it, Claire. You're good at fixing things." Something in me went quiet. My mother stood, grabbed my backpack, and dumped it onto the floor. My notebook slid across the wood. My calculator bounced under the table. The scholarship letter fell near her shoe. She looked down at it. Then she stepped on it. Not by accident. Slowly. With the heel of her house slipper grinding the fold into the paper. "You think this makes you better than us?" she asked. "It means I have a future," I said. My father walked to the front door and opened it. Rain blew in cold across the entryway. "If you walk out without signing," he said, "do not come back." I picked up my notebooks with hands that did not feel like mine. My mother said, "If your brother goes to prison because of you, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of daughter you are." "He won't go because of me," I said. "He'll go because of him." My father pointed outside. I put the crushed scholarship letter into my backpack. In the side pocket was a tiny silver recorder I had used that afternoon for debate practice. I had turned it on before my grocery shift to listen to myself practice opening arguments and forgotten to shut it off. I did not understand what it had captured. Not yet. My mother threw my old duffel bag after me. It hit the porch and rolled down 1 step. As the door shut behind me, I heard my father say, "Let her learn what loyalty costs." I slept that night in the back room of the grocery store because my manager, Mrs. Alvarez, found me sitting under the awning after midnight. She did not ask many questions. She gave me a towel, a granola bar, and the old employee couch. In the morning, my mother had already started the public version. In the family group chat, she wrote, "Claire ran away after we asked her to cooperate. She has always resented how much help Ethan needed. Please pray for us. She is making the worst night of our lives about herself." My father added, "Some children forget family when they think they're too good for home." Then my Aunt Diane wrote, "Claire, how could you abandon your mother right now?" A cousin texted me privately, "If you were involved, just own it. Don't let Ethan take everything alone." That was how fast they built the cage. Not with bars, with a story. Selfish, jealous, guilty, ungrateful. I almost answered everyone. I typed 3 different messages and deleted them all. Then I remembered Mr. Bennett saying, "One clear family version," and I realized private conversations would only give them more clay to shape. So I sent one message to the group chat. I did not agree to take responsibility for Ethan's drugs. "Do not contact me about this unless it is in writing." Then I muted the chat. Mrs. Alvarez drove me to school. My counselor called a youth housing program. Because I was 18, the help was thin, but it existed. A temporary room, a bus card, emergency groceries, and a form that did not ask me to prove my parents were monsters before it offered me a bed. That afternoon, I sat on a metal bench outside the library and finally noticed the recorder in my backpack. The battery was almost dead. I put in one earbud and pressed play. First came static. Then my father's voice. "Sign your name before the detective comes back inside." Then my mother. "Tell them it was yours. You have no record. They'll go easier on you." Then Mr. Bennett. "One clear family version is better for everyone." Then Ethan. "Just do it, Claire. You're good at fixing things." I stopped the recording and sat there with my hand around that little silver device until my fingers hurt. It was the first thing in my life my family could not rewrite. I made 3 copies. One went to an email account my parents did not know existed. One went on a USB drive I bought at a pharmacy with cash. One went into an envelope I gave Mrs. Alvarez. She read the words I wrote on the front. "Only if something happens." Then she looked at me and said, "I believe you." Those 3 words did not fix my life, but they kept me from crawling back to apologize for surviving. Detective Harris called me later that week after I left a message saying my family had pressured me to sign a false statement. He told me not to sign anything, not to meet my family alone, and not to let anyone speak for me. I was never charged. Ethan's first case became smaller than it should have been because my parents found him a real lawyer, paid money they claimed they did not have for my college deposit, and convinced the family he had been caught in a bad situation. I became the bad daughter. My mother sent messages through relatives for years. Your brother feels abandoned. Your father is heartbroken. You tore this family apart. On my 19th birthday, she mailed me a card with $20 inside, and one sentence. When you are ready to be mature, come home. I used the $20 for bus fare to orientation. I went to college, then law school. Not smoothly. Not beautifully. I worked dining hall shifts, answered phones at a legal clinic, and learned words that made my childhood sound less like drama and more like evidence. Coercion, false statement, witness pressure, conflict of interest. The law is not magic, but I learned one thing early. People who lie calmly depend on everyone else being too emotional to document them. So I documented everything. 10 years after my father threw me into the rain, I passed the bar. The first month I worked at the county prosecutor's office, a senior attorney dropped an intake packet on my desk and asked me to organize the evidence list before a meeting. I opened the folder. The defendant's name was Ethan Mercer, my brother. For a moment, I could not hear the office. I just stared at his date of birth, his address, and the charges. Narcotics distribution, conspiracy, possession with intent. I closed the folder and walked straight to my supervisor. I have a conflict, I said. That should have been the end of my involvement. Professionally, it was. I was screened off the case. Another prosecutor, Rachel Kim, took over. I did not touch evidence, make recommendations, or sit in on strategy. I had worked too hard to build a life Ethan could not contaminate. But my family had never cared about rules unless rules could be used against me. 3 nights later, my mother appeared in the lobby of my apartment building with my father and a woman I had never met. Marisa, Ethan's wife. She held a baby carrier with one hand and a manila envelope with the other. The lobby camera showed my mother standing too close to the call box, dressed in her good coat like she was there for church. I answered through the intercom. What do you want? My mother lifted the envelope. We need you to sign something. My stomach went cold. What kind of something? Marissa stepped forward. A statement saying Ethan has a family history of being blamed for things he didn't do. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so familiar, my body recognized it before my brain did. My father said, "You're a lawyer now. You know how to word it carefully," my mother added. "Just say there was confusion when you were younger. Say Ethan took blame back then because you were unstable, and the family protected you." There it was again. Not the same coffee table, not the same pen, but the same sacrifice, dressed in new paper. No private conversations, I said. My mother's face hardened on the camera. After everything, you still choose yourself. I choose the truth. I saved the lobby video. Then I texted all 3 of them. Do not come to my home again. Do not ask me to provide a false statement. Any communication must be in writing. My mother did not answer me directly. She went to the family group chat. Claire is refusing to help again. 10 years ago, Ethan protected her from consequences and she ran. Now she is using her job to punish him. Pride has a way of destroying people. The same people who had judged me at 18 started again. Aunt Diane wrote, Claire, if there is something you can say that would help, you should say it. He has a child now. A cousin wrote, you became a lawyer and forgot mercy? Then Marissa messaged me privately. You don't know me, but I know what your family says you did. If you let my husband go down because of some old grudge, I will never forgive you. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I saved it. The next morning, Rachel Kim called me into a conference room with our ethics officer. Her face told me the situation was worse than a family group chat. The defense filed a witness notice, she said. They're claiming you may have information about Ethan being blamed for drugs that belonged to someone else in the past. She slid 2 sworn letters across the table. One from my mother, one from my father. They said I had been troubled, unstable, resentful, and possibly involved with drugs at 18. They said Ethan had absorbed family consequences to protect me. They said my estrangement came from shame. My parents had tried to make me sign a lie 10 years earlier. Now they had signed it themselves. Rachel watched me carefully. Is any of this true? I opened my phone, logged into the old email account, and downloaded the file I had not played in years. No, I said. And this time they don't get the room to themselves. The hearing happened 2 weeks later. My parents arrived early. My mother wore pearls. My father carried a folder like a man who believed paper always obeyed him. Ethan sat beside his attorney with the same wounded expression he wore whenever consequences got too close. Marissa sat behind him with the baby carrier. Aunt Diane and 2 cousins sat near the aisle. My parents had wanted witnesses. They had spent 10 years feeding those witnesses a story. Now the witnesses were there. Rachel did not turn the hearing into theater. Good lawyers usually don't. She started with the official record. Detective Harris, older now, took the stand. He confirmed that 10 years earlier, Ethan had been the person found with the drugs. Ethan's car had been involved. Ethan's phone had been collected. Ethan's name had been on the investigative reports. Then Rachel asked, "Was Claire Mercer ever listed as a suspect?" "No," Detective Harris said. My mother's mouth tightened. "Did you ever receive a written confession or statement from Claire Mercer saying the drugs were hers?" "No." "Did Miss Mercer contact you about being pressured by family members to sign a false statement?" "Yes." The room shifted. Not dramatically. No gasps. Just a small change in where everyone was looking. For the first time, they were not looking at me. They were looking at my parents. Rachel then submitted the lobby video from my apartment building. It showed my mother holding up the manila envelope. It captured her voice clearly through the intercom. "Just say there was confusion when you were younger. Say Ethan took blame back then because you were unstable." Marissa turned her head slowly toward my mother. Rachel asked the court to note the phone numbers attached to the follow-up texts, asking me not to make this harder than it had to be. The numbers were my mother's and father's. Ethan's lawyer stood and argued that my family's statements had been misunderstood. He said the past was complicated. He said old family pain should not prejudice the court. Rachel picked up a small evidence bag. Inside it was my scratched silver USB drive. The plastic cap was missing. The label had faded. It looked too cheap to carry 10 years of truth. My throat tightened when the clerk connected it to the courtroom computer. The recording began with my father's voice. "Sign your name before the detective comes back inside." Then my mother. "Tell them it was yours. You have no record. They'll go easier on you." Then Mr. Bennett. "One clear family version is better for everyone." Then my father again. "If you let your brother go down, everyone will know what kind of daughter you are." Then Ethan. "Just do it, Claire. You're good at fixing things." The recording ended with the sound of rain and the front door opening. No one moved. Not my mother. Not my father. Not Ethan. Even the judge stayed still for a moment, one hand near his chin. Aunt Diane whispered, "Oh my God." Rachel did not look at me. She looked at my mother. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, "did you ask your 18-year-old daughter to tell police that Ethan's drugs were hers?" My mother gripped the bench in front of her. "I was trying to protect my family." Rachel's voice stayed even. "Please answer the question." My mother looked at Ethan, then at my father, then at me. "She had a future," she said. "Ethan would have lost everything." There it was. The sentence under every birthday card. Every family message. Every accusation. Every locked door. She had a future. As if that made it available for them to spend. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Mercer, that is not an answer. Did you ask your daughter to take responsibility for drugs that were not hers?" My father's hand shot out toward my mother's arm. But Rachel said, "Let her answer." My mother pulled her arm back from him. "Yes," she said. "But we were desperate." Marissa stood up so suddenly the baby carrier rocked against the bench. "You told me Claire was unstable," she said to Ethan. Ethan did not look at her. She turned to my mother. "You told me she abandoned him." My mother opened her mouth, but Aunt Diane spoke first. "Carol," she said, "you let us blame a child." The judge called for order, but the damage had already moved through the room. Rachel then asked the court to strike my parents' letters from consideration and withdraw any attempt to use me as a vague family history scapegoat. She pointed to the official record, the lobby video, the texts, and the recording. Ethan's attorney asked for a recess. The judge denied the delay long enough to make the ruling clear. My parents' sworn letters were struck. The defense could not use me as a character shield or imply I had hidden responsibility without opening the door to the recording. The witness notice naming me for Ethan's supposed past protection of me was withdrawn. Any further contact with me about the case had to go through counsel. Then the judge looked directly at my parents. Attempts to pressure a witness into providing a false statement can carry consequences, he said. Do not test that warning. My father's folder closed in his lap. The sound was small, but it was the sound of his plan collapsing. For 10 years, my parents had controlled the room. They controlled the phone calls, the group chat, the family version, the birthday cards, the whispered explanations, the way relatives looked at me when I walked into a store near my old neighborhood. That morning, they lost the one thing they wanted most. They lost the right to use my name. I thought I would feel victory. I did not. I felt air, like someone had opened a window in a room I had been locked inside since I was 18. Ethan turned around as the clerk gathered the exhibits. For the first time in 10 years, my brother looked scared instead of disappointed. Claire, he said, low enough that only the front rows could hear. You didn't have to do that. I looked at the evidence bag with the USB inside it. Yes, I said. I did. The fallout started before we left the courthouse. Marissa walked out before Ethan's attorney finished packing his briefcase. My mother hurried after her, saying, Please don't make this harder on him. He needs his family. Marissa turned in the hallway. No, she said. He needed the truth. You gave him a scapegoat. My father told Aunt Diane to stop typing. Aunt Diane did not stop. By the time I reached the elevator, my phone was buzzing. In the same family group chat where I had been called jealous, selfish, and guilty, Aunt Diane had written, I was wrong about Claire. I heard the recording in court. Carol and Dan tried to make her take responsibility for Ethan's drugs when she was 18. She did not lie. She did not abandon him. We repeated their story for years without asking her. I am sorry. One cousin replied, Claire, I am sorry. I believed what they said. Another wrote, I'm deleting what I posted about her last week. Then someone left the chat. Then another. My mother grabbed my sleeve near the elevator. Not hard. Just enough to remind me that she still believed touching me gave her rights. You destroyed your brother, she said. Rachel stepped between us. Mrs. Mercer, she said. The judge was clear. Do not contact her about this case. My mother dropped my sleeve like it had burned her. That was the first practical consequence I could see. She could no longer corner me in a room and call it family. The second came that afternoon. My supervisor sent me a written confirmation that I had reported the conflict properly, had been screened from Ethan's case, and was not under professional suspicion. I printed it and placed it in a folder. The third came the next day. Aunt Diane sent one more message to the family chat. She wrote that she had removed herself from a fundraiser my parents had started for Ethan's defense because she would not help pay for a strategy that tried to blame Claire again. That hit them harder than any insult would have. My parents were not poor, but they had built their public identity around being a family in crisis. They wanted prayers, money, sympathy, and silence. What they got instead was one question repeated by people who had once defended them. Why did you ask Claire to say the drugs were hers? Every time my mother tried to say I had become cold, someone answered with that question. Every time my father said the recording was old, someone asked why they had come to my apartment with a new envelope. Every time Ethan said he was being punished for the past, Marissa asked why he had let his parents lie to his wife. A month later, a letter arrived at my office because they no longer knew where I lived. It was in my mother's careful handwriting. Inside was no apology. Just 3 pages about stress, desperation, forgiveness, Ethan's baby, and how families sometimes make terrible mistakes when they are afraid. At the bottom, my father had added one line. We hope you can finally stop punishing us for one bad night. One bad night. I scanned the letter, forwarded it to Rachel, and placed the original in the folder with my supervisor's confirmation and the court notice. Then I had an attorney friend send one response. Do not contact me directly again. My mother tried one last lie after that. She wrote in a smaller relative's chat that I had twisted an old recording to make her look bad because I hated seeing Ethan have a family. Aunt Diane sent the same group the line from the court record showing my parents' letters had been struck and the witness notice withdrawn. Then she wrote, "If anyone wants to discuss Claire, discuss the record." My mother did not answer. Update. It has been almost a year since that hearing. Ethan's case is still moving through the system. I am not involved except as a witness if the court ever needs me. I do not know what sentence he will get. I do know that, for the first time in my life, I am not standing between him and the consequences he made. Marissa left him for a while. I do not know if that is permanent, and it is not my business. She sent me one message 3 months after the hearing. I believed them because I wanted my husband to be better than that. I am sorry. I did not become close to her. I did not need another person in Ethan's orbit asking me for emotional labor. But I appreciated the apology. Aunt Diane and I speak sometimes. Slowly. Carefully. She has apologized more than once, and I have told her once was enough. I am learning not to manage other people's guilt for them. Mrs. Alvarez came to my swearing-in ceremony before all of this happened. She brought the envelope I had given her when I was 18, still sealed, and handed it back to me after I raised my right hand. "You kept yourself," she said. "I keep the silver USB in a small fireproof box now. Not because I want to replay it. I have only listened to it twice since the hearing. Once to prepare. Once after, alone in my kitchen, to remind myself it really happened. The USB is scratched. The plastic cap is missing. It looks like nothing. So did the pen on the coffee table. So did the scholarship letter under my mother's shoe. So did the little line with my name typed under a confession they had written for me. For years, my parents called it one bad night. Just a statement. Just family. Just loyalty. But it was never just a statement. It was my name, my future, and the first boundary I ever kept.